The top stories tonight in Y News. Malacanang slams a U.S. bill seeking to block security assistance to the Philippine police and military. Meanwhile, for a Philippine senator, it is not only the Philippines' loss, but also of America's if the bill is enacted.
The Food and Drug Administration assures that although the approval of a COVID-19 vaccine for use in the Philippines can be fast-tracked, safety will not be compromised.
In response to the emerging risks in cyberspace, the Justice Department issues a public advisory to help protect children during online classes. A law expert says this move can help protect our children so that us not take away the government's right to protect others' rights. The country's Department of Agriculture says there are new areas hit by the African swine fever outbreak, but it assures the public that pork contaminated with the ASF virus won't reach the local market.
Two Australian scholars reportedly banned from entering China.
And NASA reveals $28 billion plan to send the first woman and the next man to the moon in 2024. Good evening, Philippines and the world. Today is Thursday, September 24, 2020. I am Harleen Delgado.
Join us in the next hour as we deliver today's top stories around the country and in other parts of the world. I'm Angelo Castro III.
We are also seen in 1,935 satellite monitoring centers nationwide and via live streaming worldwide through our website, the UNTV News and Rescue social media accounts, and of course our website, untvweb.com. I am William Theo.
First in the news, Malacanang slams a bill seeking to block security assistance to the Philippine police and military. Joining us tonight is Rosalie Cos to tell us why, live. Yes, Rosalie.
Arlene, the Philippine Human Rights Act, sponsored by Pennsylvania Representative Susan Wild on September 17, states the alleged human rights abuses in the Philippines, as well as President Rodrigo Duterte's brutal regime using the pretext of the so-called anti-terrorism law to ramp up efforts targeting labor organizers, workers, and political opponents. The U.S. lawmaker is pushing to block the United States of America's funding for Philippine police or military assistance. But Malacanang does not believe this legislative proposal will progress. Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque criticized the proposed measure. Here's the statement of Secretary Roque.
It's a very wild suggestion. So hayaan na natin na po yan. Yan po ay personal opinion ni Congresswoman Wild.
The palace is confident U.S. President Donald Trump gives importance to the bilateral relations between the Philippines and America. Secretary Roque added the Philippine government will let the procedures on the bill take its course, adding that the Duterte administration will not interfere with the sovereignty of an allied country. Here's the statement of Secretary Roque.
State Department naman po at ang administration ni President Trump, dahil sa malapit na pagkakaibigan ng ating presidente kay President Trump, ay nakikita ang halaga ng patuloy na kooperasyon sa parte po ng Estados Unidos at ng Pilipinas.
So, Rosalie, is the palace alarmed over the U.S. representative's move?
Well, Harleen, it seems like presidential spokesperson Roque is not concerned over the matter because he said, just like in the Philippines, a bill in the U.S. can only be passed into law if when both houses of Congress approved it and signed by the president. Harleen?
All right, thank you so much. Rosalie Cos reporting live. Meanwhile, some senators expressed their sentiments regarding the bill introduced by a lawmaker in the U.S. Congress, which seeks to suspend the funding of the U.S. to the Philippine police and military. Pennsylvania 7th District Representative Susan Wild introduced the Philippine Human Rights Act, which aims to suspend the U.S. security assistance until reforms are met to stop the alleged human rights abuses and violations.
Across the Philippines, Rodrigo Duterte's brutal regime is using the pretext of a so-called anti-terrorism law to ramp up efforts targeting labor organizers, workers, and political opponents. In response to these abuses, I introduced the Philippine Human Rights Act, which would block U.S. funding for police or military assistance to the Philippines, outlining a series of basic criteria which would have to be met in order to resume such funding.
Senator Panfilo Lacson, who chairs the Committee on National Defense, says that it is within the rights of the members of the U.S. Congress to file any proposed measure under any circumstances. He believes, however, should it be approved and adopted, it will not be the Philippines' loss, but of the United States as well, considering a huge part of the security aid is used to combat terrorism, which knows no borders and timing. Lacson adds the U.S. lawmakers also have to resolve the legal issue on the Visiting Forces Agreement or VFA during their deliberations, since the agreement is still in effect. Senate President Vicente Soto III also said the VFA should be reconsidered if the U.S. Congress will pass the measure. It can be recalled that the Philippine government suspended the VFA termination in June.
The Food and Drug Administration assures that although the approval of a COVID-19 vaccine for use in the Philippines can be fast-tracked, safety will not be compromised. Our health correspondent, Aiko Miguel, tells us why.
The Philippine Food and Drug Administration will expedite the process in finding cure for COVID-19. According to FDA Director General Eric Domingo, evaluating a vaccine takes 4 weeks. But for a COVID-19 potential vaccine, the process may be faster, only 2 weeks.
Bibilis kasi yung evaluation natin for COVID-19 because unlike with other vaccines before, ngayon meron tayong vaccine expert panel with the OST who will already be doing like a pre-screening. Titignan na nila yung phase 1 and phase 2 trial data. Tapos kung hindi papasa doon, hindi na pupunta sa FDA. And then sabay nang gagawin ngayon yung ethics board approval with the vaccine expert panel evaluation. Dati kasi linear yun eh. Mayroon munang technical, tapos mayroong ethics. So ngayon sabay nang gagawin yon.
Dr. Domingo also emphasized no vaccine manufacturer will take the priority lane.
We never said that we will reduce the time for any particular vaccine. No, all of the vaccines will be checked expeditiously and will be evaluated expeditiously. There will be no special treatment of any of the vaccines.
The FDA has not received any application from vaccine manufacturers for the conduct of vaccine clinical trials in the country.
We cannot compromise safety for speed. The FDA will expedite the process, but no step shall be skipped. Kasi there are things worse than no vaccine. No? A bad vaccine is worse than no vaccine, and an unsafe or an ineffective vaccine is worse than no vaccine. Yan ang laging sinasabi sa atin ng WHO.
Meanwhile, experts advise the public that when a person is vaccinated, one should still observe the minimum health protocols, including proper hand hygiene and wearing a face mask.
How does it last? We don't know. Everything, as of now, everything, there is, our knowledge is evolving. So hindi pa natin talaga, even those who developed actively COVID-19, in previous studies, it's been shown that the antibodies wane or bumaba pa. So, would it be the same with the vaccine? That is something to be seen. Hindi pa po natin alam.
Aiko Miguel, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
The Commission on Elections is asking Congress to increase its budget for next year when the country will hold another presidential election. Ray Pelayo tells us why.
The Commission on Elections' proposed budget for next year amounts to almost 23.7 billion pesos, but this has been slashed by more than half The Department of Budget and Management approved only 10.41 billion pesos for COMELEC's 2021 budget. According to COMELEC spokesperson Director James Jimenez, a huge chunk of this last portion of their budget was supposed to be used in measures to take during the 2022 national elections amid the COVID-19 pandemic. The COMELEC wanted to rent additional vote counting machines.
Yung gagawin natin sa present budget, kung yan lang ang mabigay sa amin, is i-refurbish namin. Gagawin namin parang bago.
Around 65.4 million voters or an increase of 13.76% from last elections are expected to vote in 2022.
Kapag marami ang botante at nagsisiksikan sila sa isang makina, medyo unsafe po yan pagdating sa sitwasyon nating pandemya ngayon.
Based on COMELEC's plan for the elections, the number of voters inside precincts at one time will be reduced from 12 to 5 to maintain a safe physical distance. COMELEC is also looking to hold the elections for more than one day to reduce the number of voters coming to the venues. The online filing of candidacy is also being considered. Meanwhile, Agusan del Norte Representative Lawrence Fortun is worried about the turnout of the 2022 elections if the poll body fails to convince Filipino voters that it is safe to go to polling precincts physically.
If COMELEC cannot assure our voters of their safety, considering that electoral activities really draw large crowds, baka maraming hindi boboto.
The poll body is also waiting for election-related bills to address fears of virus transmission. This includes early voting for persons with disability and senior citizens, as well as voting via mail. COMELEC also plans to apply the best practices in other countries who had held elections in the middle of the pandemic, such as South Korea. There's also a bill that aims to push for hybrid elections. However, COMELEC estimates that 50 to 60 billion pesos will be needed for hybrid elections. Ray Pelayo, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
Closer look at the updated count of coronavirus cases around the world. The COVID-19 pandemic has now reached a total of more than 31.8 million confirmed cases in 188 countries, regions, and sovereignties. That's after more than 246,000 new cases were logged across various countries. The fast-spreading disease has claimed over 976,000 lives after more than 4,000 reportedly died from the disease across the world since yesterday. While almost 22 million patients across the globe have recovered from the coronavirus infection. Thanks be to God.
In his United Nations General Assembly speech, President Rodrigo Duterte called for peace but also warned of rising geopolitical tensions. Rosalie Cos tells us why.
If we cannot be friends as yet, then in God's name, let us not hate each other too much. I heard it once said, and I say it to myself, complete agreement.
This was one of the highlights of the more than 20-minute speech of President Rodrigo Duterte at the United Nations General Assembly on Wednesday, the first ever address of the Philippine Chief Executive in the popular multilateral forum. He called for peace but also warned of rising geopolitical tensions. However, this was not the first time the president made this pronouncement. During his first State of the Nation address in 2016, the president made the same statements but in reference to the communist groups. Aside from this line, the chief executive was also praised for asserting the arbitral victory of the Philippines over China before the UN General Assembly. According to Malacanang, many are involved in writing the speech of the chief executive in special occasions, including the UN General Assembly and his sonas. However, most of the input in the address are from the president himself, especially the international issues.
Ang gumawa po ng speech yan ay marami. Yan po, tawagin na lang natin silang Team Philippines. Pero yung mga subject matter po na nabanggit ng Presidente pagdating sa mga international issues, si Presidente po mismo ang namili kung anong gusto niyang i-discuss. Hindi naman po pwedeng sabihin sinulat yan ng iba para sa kanya dahil ang pagkakaalam ko po, by the time he is done with the speech, matapos po niyang i-rehearse, bagong-bago na po lumalabas. So malaking input mo din talaga dyan ay galing kay Presidente mismo.
For the palace official, President Duterte's speech at the UN General Assembly was excellent, clear and comprehensive. Roque also said the president did not mention any new policy.
Lahat po yan po yung existing policies na ating presidente. Ayaw nga lang pakinggan ng mga kritiko ng presidente na habang hindi pa nababanggit sa UN General Assembly. At dito po yung mga kasalukuyang polisiya na ng presidente.
Rosa Licoz, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
The Department of Justice Cybercrime Division issues an advisory on the conduct of online classes which use video conferencing. A law expert says the DOJ's move is beneficial, adding that we must not take away the government's right to protect others' rights. Dante Amento tells us why.
In response to the emerging risks in cyberspace, the Justice Department issues a public advisory to help protect children during online classes. The DOJ suggests to school administrators and teachers not to share meeting room credentials to the public such as the ID and password. Instead, such details must be given only to students registered in the particular class, as well as to their parents. Set the meeting configuration like accepting participants' request to join individually. Provide a standard naming instruction, and the video must be turned off when the class begins. Do not allow to send messages to one another. Do not permit participants to access the file transfer. Never leave students alone in a virtual classroom. Parents and guardians must guide their children and teach them how to use the technology to avoid falling prey to cyber criminals. Attorney George Erwin Garcia, Dean of the Pamantasan ng Lungsod ng Manila College of Law, says that DOJ's move is beneficial and helps protect our children from abuse or exploitation.
Huwag din nating tatanggalin yung karapatan ng pamahalaan na i-regulate yung mga karapatan na ito to protect the rights also of others.
Attorney Garcia adds, this move can be discussed between parents and school administrators since it is not a law but merely recommendations.
Kinakailangan may consultative process. Lagi mong tinatanong at kinakailangan may pagsang-ayon ang mga bata at may pagsang-ayon din ng teacher.
The public is advised to report irregularities or unwanted incidents during online classes to the proper authorities. This can be through the PNP Anti-Cybercrime Group, National Bureau of Investigation Cybercrime Division, or the Department of Justice Cybercrime Office. Dante Amento, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
The Supreme Court is considering to hold the next bar examinations online. In today's Senate hearing on the proposed 2021 budget of the judiciary, Senator Francis Tolentino cited that there are several states in the U.S. that are gearing towards having online bar examinations. According to Chief Justice Diosdado Peralta, they are looking into the said move. The Supreme Court has decided to postpone the 2020 bar examinations due to the coronavirus pandemic and scheduled the exams for November 2021 in conjunction with the 2021 bar examinations. Next year's bar exams will be held simultaneously in 3 sites located in Manila, Visayas, and Mindanao.
In other news, the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council includes the minimum health standards to fight COVID-19 in the government's disaster preparedness plan, such as if a preemptive evacuation is declared, people must wear a mask and maintain the 1-meter physical distance. Vincent Arboleda will tell us why.
7 to 10 typhoons more are likely to enter the Philippine area of responsibility, according to the Philippine Atmospheric Geophysical Astronomical Services Administration, or PAG-ASA. To add to that is the La Nina phenomenon and the above normal rainfall conditions in some areas of the country in the first quarter of 2021. As the COVID-19 pandemic continues, the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council, or NDRRMC, has included the Health Department's minimum health protocols to fight COVID-19 transmission in the government's disaster preparedness plans. Under Memorandum Number 54, Series of 2020, the NDRRMC advises the public to always be ready for any disasters by preparing a go bag that contains food, bottled water, clothes, whistle, flashlight, medicines, radio, cell phone and power bank, and important documents. If evacuation is not needed, residents are advised to stay inside their homes. But if a preemptive evacuation is declared, people must wear a mask and maintain the 1 meter physical distance. In evacuation centers, authorities must check and monitor the temperature of evacuees using thermal scanners, while the number of persons allowed inside an evacuation area will be limited.
So for example po, yung isang room ay kasing size ng isang classroom. Ang nangyayari po ngayon is 2 to 3 families lang o 5 persons each ang pwedeng makagamit noong room na yun.
Evacuation centers which had been converted to COVID-19 quarantine facilities must not be used as evacuation centers anymore. The local government must also designate a distribution area for relief goods. Residents may place a chair outside their homes or their evacuation rooms to prevent physical contact during distribution of relief items. Timbal said there will be enough supply of relief goods during an emergency situation. When it comes to rescue operations and preemptive evacuations, rescue personnel must use personal protective equipment including a face mask, hand gloves, and face shield. Full body PPE must always be on hand.
Ang ating pong reglamento kasi dyan ay masigurado na lahat ng empleyado ng gobyerno na involved sa response, mga volunteers at saka mga response organizations natin, mga rescue organizations, ay protektado pa rin against COVID-19 kahit patuloy po ang pagtatrabaho for disaster response.
For COVID-19 positive individuals who need to be evacuated, a separate medical team will take charge. The NDRRMC advises the public to always be ready for when a disaster strikes while considering safety against COVID-19. Vincent Arboleda, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
The country's Department of Agriculture says there are new areas hit by the African swine fever outbreak, but it assures the public that pork contaminated with the ASF virus won't reach the local market. Joe Annano explains why.
African swine fever remains to be a problem in the country as the Department of Agriculture identifies 6 provinces that are considered as new areas with ASF outbreak. These are Laguna, Cavite, Batangas, Quirino, Quezon, and Albay. Agriculture Secretary William Dar says that 9 out of the country's 16 regions are hit by the ASF outbreak. Secretary Dar assures there are measures in place to address the swine disease.
Mayroon na tayong ugnayan sa mga LGUs para sila na yung nakabantay doon sa may yun sa mga areas na may declared na ASF cases at may quarantine na yan, hindi na makakalabas. At kung ano yung kinakailangan na i-depopulate.
The agriculture chief also assures that pork and pork products contaminated with the ASF virus will not be sold in the market.
Lahat po na pupunta sa merkado dapat ay dadaan sa slaughterhouses at doon sa slaughterhouses ay nakabantay ang ating mga kawani ng National Meat Inspection Service at sila yung magbibigay ng certification na ito ay walang sakit at safe na kainin itong karne na ito.
According to the Department of Agriculture, they continue to provide financial assistance to hog raisers affected by the ASF outbreak. Secretary Dar cites the 5,000 cash aid for every hog that will be called continuous. About 300,000 hogs have been called because of the ASF outbreak, according to the Agriculture Department. Experts say that ASF cannot be transmitted to humans through contact with pigs or pork. ASF only affects members of the pig family. Joanna Ano, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Now, here's a glimpse of what's the weather like in parts of the country. A low-pressure area, or LPA, will affect parts of the country. State Weather Bureau Pagasa says as of 3 p.m. today, the LPA was located 440 kilometers east-northeast of Kasiguran, Aurora. The LPA and the southwest monsoon, or hanging habagat, will bring cloudy skies with scattered rain showers and thunderstorms over Isabela, Aurora, Quezon Province, including Polillo Island, Bicol Region, Northern Samar, Mimaropa, and Western Visayas. Meanwhile, partly cloudy to cloudy skies with isolated rain showers and thunderstorms will be felt over Metro Manila and the rest of the country due to localized thunderstorms. Possible flash floods or landslides may occur during severe thunderstorms. No tropical cyclone advisory is issued.
The Department of Environment and Natural Resources denies accusations that the dolomite white sand in Manila Bay has been eroded. DENR Undersecretary Benny Antipoda says it is unfair for critics to discredit the department. Vincent Arboleda will tell us why.
The beach nourishment project of the DENR at the Manila Bay is still underway. That is why Environment Undersecretary Benny Antipoda says that it is unfair for the agency that its critics are bashing the project and say that the white sand gets eroded because of strong rains. USEC Antipoda says they are doing their best to finish the project before the year ends.
Now, pag na-complete ito, that's the time for them to criticize. And if indeed there is a shortcoming or shortchange yung taong bayan by the contractor, then we will run after the contractor and sue them or file legal cases against them just to get back the money of the people.
The Undersecretary gave his response after some netizens posted on social media images showing the white sand project in Manila Bay with seemingly eroded white sand. In a post, Marion said that almost a quarter of the white sand area has been eroded. In Jim's post, he said that no matter how many dolomite is dumped in Manila Bay, it will still darken because of pollution. But the DNR clarifies that the white sand in the Baywalk area has not been eroded. The DNR says the gray area seen on the beach side is still under construction and that no white sand has been laid as of yet.
Yung sa beach side natin, yan yung kakabitan ng 380 meters pa na kasunod nitong project dahil 120 yung natapos na, ito yung kasunod, no? Kung kaya't hindi nilagyan ng topping na puti yan.
USEC Antipoda also said they have placed geotubes and geotextiles in the area to protect it from erosion. Geotubes are environmentally friendly sacks that contain sand and is placed on the beach front and beach side to prevent coastal erosion. Geotextiles serve as base where the white sand is being overlaid to prevent it from dissolving. The sacks placed on the edge meanwhile serve as marker for people not to cross the area as the water is already deep. To further lessen the coliform level in the waters of Manila Bay, the DNR plans to place solar-powered sewerage treatment plants around the area. One of these will be the solar-powered sewerage treatment plant in the Baywalk area.
If magiging okay siya, definitely lalagyan na yung buong Manila Bay, yung buong paligid niyan. And at the same time, pipigilan mo yung pagtapo naman ng mga tributaries.
Vincent Arboleda, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
Malacanang favors the distribution of unutilized 10 billion peso Social Amelioration Program Fund to other beneficiaries. Senator Aquilino Pimentel III, on the other hand, explains that it is lawful for the Departments of Social Welfare and Development, or DSWD, to have a change of purpose for the SAP fund. Asher Cadapan Jr. details why.
Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque said today that the unutilized 10 billion peso fund from the Social Amelioration Program should be used to aid more households in sectors severely affected by the COVID-19 pandemic.
Dahil yan po ay naibigay na ng Kongreso, kung po pwede nga po ay ibigay pa po yan doon sa mga pamilya na hindi pa nakakatanggap ng second tranche.
The Department of Social Welfare and Development initially recommends to use the fund for livelihood programs. According to DSWD Secretary Rolando Joselito, the recommendation came up in a meeting with the economic managers.
Ang nakuha namin na guidance ay mag-request ng change of purpose upang magamit magamit na karagdagang pondo para sa livelihood assistance grant or LAG na parte ng recovery phase ng SAP.
Senator Aquilino Coco Pimentel III backs the DSWD's plan for repurposing the fund, stating that such move is lawful. The senator further explains that the fund may be reallocated to another program of the DSWD to help those who are in need.
Binalikan natin yung Bayanihan 2 law at nakita naman natin doon merong flexibility ang DSWD na gumawa ng mga programa para itulong nila sa ating taong bayan, sa mga mamamayan natin na nangangailangan ng tulong.
DSWD Secretary Bautista, however, understands that the decision to use the fund for other programs requires approval from President Rodrigo Duterte. Asher Gadapan Jr., UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
And for the news abroad, here's Maria Latoza reporting live from Perth, Australia.
William, Australia's federal treasurer Josh Frydenberg implied that debt for a lifetime could hit Australia even if the government considers fast-forwarding tax cuts that could predominantly give benefit to the nation's highest earners. The federal treasurer did not sound very optimistic when asked regarding the likelihood of the elimination of Australia's record-high federal deficit in this lifetime. He answered that the goal is to eliminate it, but he also added that the economic shock has been like no other, not just for Australia, but also for the rest of the world. He also mentioned how Australia has fared a lot better than other nations. However, there's still a big hole in the country's economy. Moreover, he emphasized the importance of the plans and policies that are being implemented in Australia, like the JobKeeper, as well as the $750 Australian payment to cash flow boost to help small businesses with working capital. He also brought up the undertaking of supply-side reforms like the insolvency, which can be significantly important and helpful to businesses to be able to trade out of the current crisis. Measures such as cutting the red tape, other tax incentives, and bringing forward infrastructures are also being looked at. On the other hand, a tough new liquid assets test is set to be reintroduced from today, setting around an estimated 400,000 newly unemployed workers to live off their savings before they can claim job seeker. This means workers who lost their jobs due to COVID-19 have to wait for 12 weeks to claim their job seeker payments. This rule applies to anyone with more than 5,000 Australian dollars in their bank, including the redundancy pay they are yet to receive. In March, the liquid assets test was scrapped but are being reintroduced today along with separate assets tests for cars and investment properties, which are expected to boot 37,000 people off the dole entirely. The Canadian government highlights the generation of 1 million new jobs for Canadians during the throne speech. Bianca Quijano, one of our correspondents in Canada, will tell us why.
Every new session of Parliament in Canada, a throne speech is read to outline the government's goals. In this year's throne speech, Governor-General Julie Payette announced that the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy will be extended until summer 2021. The benefit helped Canadian businesses who lost revenue due to COVID-19 by covering 75% of their workers' wages. This equals to a maximum of $847 or 31,000 pesos per week for their employees. The government will also be creating over 1 million new jobs in hopes of jumpstarting the economy. There will be a new benefit for casual or contract workers called Canada Recovery Benefit to help those not eligible for traditional employment insurance. These workers who lost work due to COVID-19 can receive up to $400 or 14,000 pesos per week for 26 weeks. Payette also shared words of encouragement during the 1-hour-long speech.
Like a reed in high winds, we may sway, but we will not break. Because our roots are firmly in place, our goals clear, and because we have hope. The hope that lifts the soul on dark days and keeps us focused on the future.
Other plans outlined include plans to amend the criminal code to better protect senior citizens living in long-term care homes who were hit particularly hard by COVID-19. Senior citizens represent 42.9% of Canada's COVID-19 deaths. On top of this, recent reports of abuse at care homes shocked Canadians. More programs to help women participate in the workforce will also be boosted. Payette announced plans for a nationwide early learning and childcare system. The throne speech is a ceremony in Canada inherited from the United Kingdom as a former member of the British Empire. Traditionally, the reigning monarch delivers the speech. If the Queen is not present, their official representative delivers the formal address. Bianca Quijano, UNTV News and Rescue, Toronto, Canada. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
2 Australian scholars were reported by Chinese state media Global Times to have been banned by China from entering the country under its exit and entry administration law, but without a specific explanation. Our fellow Australia correspondent, Early Briones, will tell us why live. Yes, Early.
Moriel, the entry ban comes as Australian researchers Clive Hamilton and Alex Josk reported to have ascertained and mapped 380 suspected detention centers that's been built since 2017 in China. The 380 sites are likened to a high-security prison-style facilities as well as re-education camps in Xinjiang, an autonomous region of the People's Republic of China. Said action taken by China came a little less than 2 weeks after the Australian government has cancelled the visas of 2 Chinese academics. Clive Hamilton is a professor at Charles Sturt University in Canberra and is the author of Silent Invasion, which talks about the rising influence of Communist Party of China in Australian politics and society. A key advocate for the foreign interference laws introduced in 2018 under former Australian Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull. On the other hand, Alex Josk, a researcher in Australian Strategic Policy Institute, made a statement today on Twitter and stated that China's ban on him entering the country is the latest in a series of attempts by the Chinese Communist Party to punish those who shed light on the CCP's activities and its interference in politics. Josk also confirmed that whilst he grew up in China and would love to return in better times, he has not applied nor held any Chinese visa in years. He refused to do an interview regarding the issue. Marielle?
Thank you. Early reporting live from Australia. Australia's second largest bank, WestPac, has been fined with a record-breaking $1.3 billion. Joining us tonight is one of our fellow correspondents here in Australia, Marvi Delphine, to tell us why live. Yes, Marvi.
Marielle, because of breaching anti-money laundering laws and failing to stop transactions that funded child exploitation, mostly facilitated in the Philippines, Australia's second largest bank, WestPac, has settled to pay the 1.3 billion Australian dollar fine. That is the largest fine in the country's corporate history. This comes after it admitted to 23 million breaches of financial crime laws relating to international money laundering and transfers that funded terrorism and human exploitation, particularly child sex trafficking. WestPac's chief executive Peter King made an apology today for the bank's failings to declare the suspicious transaction histories within the adequate time frame to the Financial Crimes Regulator, the Australian Transaction Reports and Analysis Centre, or AUSTRAC. Austrac's investigation of WestPac exposed programming errors that led to 5 years of missing proper records of payment information to the watchdog. In today's statement of agreed facts, which will be presented to the federal court, it was revealed that one WestPac customer had funded 40,000 Australian dollars relating to child exploitation syndicates in the Philippines from 2014 to 2018. Austrac said WestPac failed to identify activity potentially indicative of child exploitation risks by failing to implement appropriate transaction monitoring detection scenarios. Austrac, along with the Attorney General's office, have previously warned that frequent low-value payments to the Philippines could be at risk of being related to child exploitation rings, but WestPac showed a very significant lack of compliance and thus faces a costly consequence. Marielle?
Marvi, online child sexual exploitation is one of the most alarming forms of human trafficking in the Philippines and is becoming more prevalent now as people spend more time at home due to COVID-19. What further actions have Australia and the Philippines done besides investigating bank operations?
Marielle, the Philippines, being an English-speaking nation with a time zone similar to Australia's, has certainly become a prime target for pedophiles, especially now in this COVID-19 crisis. Such criminals attracted to children are able to find their victims among poor families desperate to make a living. All they need is access to a webcam and the internet to live stream and pay-per-view a performance, and access to a remittance facility to receive payments. Depending on age, number of victims and viewers and nature of the abuse, some Australian cyber predators pay as little as $15 to $500 for Filipino children to perform sexual acts online while being filmed. Evidence collection is sometimes problematic because of perpetrators taking advantage of encrypted communications when purchasing shows. And so there has been close cooperation between the Australian Federal Police team in Manila and local counterparts, which resulted in some success with multiple arrests made. Since February last year, a center was established in Manila to facilitate more international cooperation. The Philippine Internet Crimes Against Children Center brings together the Philippine National Police, Australian Federal Police, UK's National Crime Agency, and US-based global anti-trafficking group International Justice Mission. Marielle?
All right, thank you, Marvi, reporting live from Perth, Australia. Let's now take a closer look at the updated count of coronavirus cases in countries worst hit by the pandemic. The United States of America is approaching the 7 million mark for its COVID-19 cases, now at more than 6.9 million confirmed cases, still the highest among the countries affected by the pandemic. While deaths in the U.S. have surpassed 200,000, a grim news for Americans. Meanwhile, joining the top 5 countries in Colombia, surpassing the number of confirmed cases in Peru, which was top 5 last week. Colombia becomes the 5th country to pass the 700,000 mark. A new analysis by experts reveals that at least 51.6 million people are doubly hit by climate-related disasters and COVID-19. That is according to a new analysis published yesterday by the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, or IFRC, and the Red Cross Red Crescent Climate Center. Meanwhile, at least a further 2.3 million people have been affected by major wildfires. Also, an estimated 437.1 million people in vulnerable groups have been exposed to extreme heat. All these while contending with the direct health impacts of COVID-19 or measures implemented by governments to stem its transmission. The analysis also shows that out of 132 identified unique extreme weather events that have occurred so far in this year, 92 unique extreme weather events have overlapped with the COVID-19 pandemic. Clinicians in Singapore developed a swab bot, and what this robot can do may be favorable to a subject undergoing a swab test. Roy Checa, one of our correspondents in Singapore, explains why live. Yes, Roy.
Marielle, Singapore is staying ahead of the curve by developing a new automated nasal swabbing robot to diagnose COVID-19. This new machine named SwabBot has been under development since April this year by clinicians from the National Cancer Center Singapore, Singapore General Hospital, and Duke National University of Singapore Medical School to hopefully make swab testing procedures more comfortable for patients. Compared to similar robots developed by other countries, the Singapore SwabBot is the first that allows patients to have full control over the swab process, having the ability to activate and terminate the machine at will. It allows patients to take the procedure at a more comfortable pace. The process only takes 20 seconds to complete, half the time a manual swab test usually takes. The development team hopes that the machine can provide a more standardized procedure and increase the test's efficiency while limiting the manpower needed to conduct the tests and therefore leading to less exposure to the virus. Marielle?
Roy, what is the general public's opinion on nasal swabbing there in Singapore? Do they find it painful or uncomfortable?
Marielle, the majority will of course find some degree of discomfort. Patients might experience some ticklishness and may feel like sneezing or coughing, but other than that, the procedure is generally painless. And with the new robot coming, it will lessen the discomfort even more. So Singaporeans can definitely look forward to that. Marielle?
Also, Roy, can you tell us the update on COVID cases there in Singapore?
Marielle, COVID cases here in Singapore has dropped from 532 active cases last week to 321 active cases this week, reported as of September 23 yesterday. The cases are gradually decreasing, and we hope this decline in active cases will carry on as we continue to follow the safety measures in the community. Marielle?
All right, thank you, Roy Checa, reporting live from Singapore. And those are the reasons behind the news here in Australia and in other parts of the globe. Back to you, William.
Thank you, Mariela Toza, live from Perth, Australia.
In 2024, the world will hear about the first woman who sets foot on the moon. Here's why from Nina Bascon.
For the first time since 1972 Apollo moon mission, NASA plans to send the next man to the moon, and this time it is a woman in 2024. The space agency revealed its latest plans of the mission amounting to $28 billion through the Artemis program. NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine in his statement thanks the President, the Congress, the American taxpayers, and space industry for the combined efforts to strengthen the nation's space program. He adds under the Artemis program, humanity will explore regions of the moon never visited before. He hopes to build a long-term presence on the moon by the end of the decade. The mission will use the Space Launch System, NASA's powerful new rocket, and the Orion spacecraft. The first phase of the space agency's mission, called Artemis 1, includes a month-long test flight around the moon without astronauts. Then Artemis 2 will then fly with crew in 2023, while Artemis 3 would begin the humanity's return to the surface of the moon in 2024. According to the plan, the Artemis 3 astronauts will collect samples and conduct experiments. Nina Bascon, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
And those are the reasons behind the news, September 24, 2020. I am Harleen Delgado.
Reasons we deliver to you as they unfold. I'm Angelo Castro III.
Because we need to know, we will always ask why. I am William Theo. We serve the people, we give glory to God.